Welcome back to the Ben Motorcycle Adventures podcast, your hub for everything off-road, dual sport, and motorcycle adventure. My name is John. I'll be your host, and here we are, episode number 5. Thanks for joining me, and judging by the number of downloads on episode 4, which covered the first 4 of 9 items that you should have on your motorcycle adventure packing list, I need to get this 5th episode out here in a hurry. There's probably quite a few people wondering what the rest of these items are, so we're going to knock this thing out tonight. Items 5 through 9 that should be on your motorcycle adventure packing list. Happy to report that the next episode will actually include a guest. I've talked about it quite a bit, and actually I think I have about 10 people lined up for interviews, but I definitely have one set in stone for Thursday, so the next episode will include a guest, and we'll talk about that toward the end of this episode. So really excited. It's just tough aligning schedules this time of year. A lot of people take vacation. Obviously, the holidays are busy, so we'll get through that, and we'll start bringing you guys some quality guests. On one of the previous podcast episodes, I talked about someone, actually I believe his name was Will, and he was from Louisiana. And he'd actually called me, and what he was really doing was making an inquiry about whether or not I was hiring. Obviously, the allure of riding a motorcycle and adventuring for a living is very high, but we already talked about that. But yesterday I did get not a call, but I got an email from another gentleman. This guy's name was Ben, and he's from New York, and along the same lines, looking to get a foot in the door, looking to get into the industry. I was happy to hear that he was a KTM 500 owner. That is very important. But another good conversation, like I said, this time through email. And, with both of these gentlemen, my main point to them was I don't really care where you go in the industry. Obviously, when people reach out to me, if we're going to need help, with sweep riders and things of that nature on tours, I will obviously give these guys a call and we'll see where we go from there. But it doesn't matter what your job is or what industry you're in. I stress to both of these guys the importance of customer service. To me, customer service can mean a lot of things. I think for most people, when they think of customer service, they think of a cashier working at a clothing store or a grocery store, it's true. Those interactions they have with customers, obviously the customer relations there are important, but, within any job, if you're working cross-functionally or if you're working with customers, you just have to exercise good customer service. You have to work well with others. Otherwise, it really doesn't matter the industry. I don't think that you'll go far. And ultimately, again, going back to working cross-functionally, you're going to need, other players within your organization or within your small business to help you at some point in time. So learn from my mistakes. Don't torch those bridges, and really make it a point to, I don't want to say be a team player, but really make it a point to try to add value to everybody. So when you really need help and you really need to call on somebody, you can pick up the phone, you can go to their office, whatever, but you can get the help you need. So again, importance of customer service, obviously paramount in the service industry, but just across the board, my 2 cents for the night. We get moving forward here with our motorcycle adventure packing list. Last week we covered 4 of the 9 items. The first couple of items being water and food. Obviously you can live quite a bit longer without food than you can water, but they're going to be very important considerations for how you transport, how you carry that stuff along the way. Third thing being shelter or lodging. If you're like me and you opt for I'll call it life of luxury, you don't have to put a whole lot of thought into this, but as a reminder, make sure you make your reservations well in advance. People like me who have a tendency to plan things early, we're going to have the pick of the litter. We're going to be able to book rooms where we want to stay. And a lot of these adventures take place in the summer, There's not as much, vacancy in hotels, motels, lodges, whatever the case may be. So make sure you plan this stuff well in advance. If you're camping off the bike, that looks a little bit different. You'll need a tent. I talked about a few options last week. You will also need a sleeping bag, perhaps a sleeping pad, and a couple of other things. And again, you can revisit our episode from last week for more details, or you can email me, benmotorcycleadventures@gmail.com. Last thing we covered, first aid kits. No brainer. Again, I've neglected this in the past, but go to Amazon, source the types of supplies you're going to need. Go to the grocery store, buy travel items, whatever the case may be. Put together something that can help you stabilize, a motorcycle-related injury, cut, wound, gash, strain, break, stuff like that, so you can stabilize injuries and perhaps ride to help or get help or continue on with your adventure. Okay, it is absolutely time to get to this list. So number 5 on your motorcycle adventure packing list would be clothing and gear. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. John, I'm going to be wearing the gear. I may stow a little bit of clothing, whatever the case may be. I hear you, but hear me out, right? You may actually fly to your motorcycle adventure destination or the start of your trip, or you may have to make a long drive. So under those circumstances, you should probably make a list of the things that you want to bring along, go through your gear bag a couple times, and don't be that guy or girl who forgets their boots or their helmet. That's a very rough way to start any ride. So again, make a list, go through the gear, and that list should include some of the things I'm going to talk about here real quick. Won't go too in depth, but obviously a helmet. If you decide to go on a motorcycle adventure without a helmet, wow, I don't know anybody who'd do that, so we'll just move past that. But these days, I'm wearing Troy Lee Designs helmets, and that's not a plug on them, but just a couple things I want to say about helmets. In my opinion, the Troy Lee Designs helmets are safe, they're light, they're Snell and Dot approved, they're equipped with MIPS technology, which I don't remember what the acronym for, but essentially the MIPS system acts as, a group of shock absorbers within the helmet. So if you take a spill, you kind of have another layer of protection there. So I wouldn't ride without a helmet that has MIPS these days. That's my opinion. You definitely want something that is at the least Snell and Dot certified. Don't just take my word for helmet recommendations if you're in the market. I do know that Troy Lee Designs makes very good helmets, but one of the most important things to do is to go try on the helmets at a store. Even if you're going to buy it online, all these things fit quite a bit differently, and comfort has to be paramount. So my advice, go try on your helmet, factor in some of the things I talked about, MIPS, Snell, DOT, and just find the right helmet for you. And, don't forget it before you start your trip. Boots, you won't catch me without a full-blown motocross boot. I've seen people ride with hiking boots, tennis shoes, you name it. Not my cup of tea. They're even like, mid-riding boots and things like that for dual sport, or boots that are more flexible. That's fine if that's what you choose to ride in. But just remember, most of us have ridden over the top of our ankles or jammed our legs, and I never forget those times and those experiences, and that's why I wear a really good boot, and I wear, again, a full-blown motocross boot, which I believe is going to protect you better than anything. So to each their own, but obviously you don't want to forget the boots. And if you want my 2 cents on what boots I like, these days it's the Gaerne SG12. I'm on my first pair after 14, 15 years of running the Gaerne SG10s, which I didn't think could be outdone. But, having had the 12 for a while, having experienced almost no break-in, good sole life, and what I believe to be more comfort and flexibility, my next boot will also be the Gaerne SG12. Now, I did also have a set of CD Crossfires last year, which is a boot that is highly regarded. I was excited to try those out, but truth be told, kind of disappointed in the performance of the boot for a couple reasons. I thought that the sole wore out prematurely. Now, you can replace the sole, but that's That's not something that I commonly do. And I didn't care for the buckle system. I thought the boots, they kind of felt like they had too much plastic on them, therefore being too stiff. And one of the worst things was I felt like the boot put me higher when I was standing up, higher off the pegs. So I was really uncomfortable with the riding position, and I just had to move on from the CDs. But they may be a great boot for you. I know they're a great boot for a lot of people, and again, they have a great reputation. But that's just kind of how I feel about boots. Okay, motorcycle riding pants. You can obviously throw on a set of jeans and go for it. I wouldn't recommend it. I always appreciate the comfort and what protection motorcycle pants provide, especially for a long ride. And I'm really fond of a lot of these adventure style pants that have pockets integrated and Kevlar and things like that. So they're pretty durable and they're pretty functional for the types of riding that I like to do these days. Right now I'm wearing some Climb. I believe they're Badlands pants. Now, Climb gear is very expensive, but it's just an option I chose, and one that I'm really glad I did. Again, the pants are a little bit steep, and these are more oriented towards arid conditions, drier conditions throughout the year. So when it gets a little bit cold, usually I throw on some sort of compression thermals or something, but I'm very happy with these pants. And again, for a long motorcycle adventure, I can't see you wearing anything other than a motorcycle riding type of pant, even if it's a set of Fox motocross pants. Those are going to be way better than anything you'd buy off the shelf at a clothing store or an REI or something. So I would default towards motocross pants, adventure style pants, something along those lines. Goggles, or the motorcycle helmets with the face shields. I've never worn one of those before, but I've seen a couple of nice options this past year, so that may be something I try and test for 2019. There's definitely times when I wish I had a shield on my helmet. I doubt that I'll ever really go away from wearing goggles, but for instance, if you're out on the open road, you can slam the shield down and keep from bugs hitting you in the face for the most part, which is probably the one knock on goggles, at least until you get off-road. Back to the goggles, throughout the years I've always worn Scott goggles, since the dawn of time, really, right? I've worn Scott 89s, Prospect, Hustle, Recoil. Really a good fan of those, or really a big fan of those goggles. I like the foam. They fit my face well. And I recently seen that they brought back their light sensitive lens, which is, for me, the best and my most favorite lens. Being colorblind, I have a bit of a problem seeing transitions, between the light with the shadows. The light sensitive lens really, really helps me out with that. And if you're not familiar with what the light sensitive lens does, essentially it changes with changes in the light. So if it's a little bit dark, it's going to lighten up. If you start riding into the sun, it's going to darken up. So very convenient. And if I don't have the option for a light sensitive lens, which I really haven't with Scott goggles for quite some time, my next favorite would be the mirrored lens. The mirrored lens, they're really nice. They're kind of expensive. That's really one of my two knocks on it, but they do a great job of, reflecting or deflecting light away from your eyes, and you get a very consistent view of the terrain, if you will. Those shadows are kind of washed out, and again, the transitions, everything kind of looks the same. So I love a mirrored lens. I hate them for the price, and if you scratch them, they're pretty much destroyed, which for me, I probably need to do a better job of taking care of my goggles because I have a tendency to scratch those things up. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some more protective items that you might pack or bring along for the ride or actually wear. Knee pads, shoulder pads, elbow pads, all great options. Personally, I don't wear shoulder pads anymore. I used to never leave home without them, but throughout the years, I've just gotten tired of the elbow pads breaking off most of the sets I've had, so I stopped wearing them. I would recommend that you do wear them. It's another nice layer of protection. It can ward off roost. It can keep sticks from, jabbing you or even penetrating your skin. So pretty good option there. Elbow pads, same thing. I don't wear these. I should have learned my lesson a couple years ago Was doing a race down in Southern Oregon, went down in some rocks and just gashed the crap out of my elbow. Had to get some stitches to get that thing sewed up. But again, I didn't learn my lesson, and I don't wear elbow pads, but it's a solid piece of protective equipment if you can find something that is comfortable for you. As far as knee pads are concerned, I did learn my lesson. Many years ago, like most of you, I had to wear the knee cups, which I despised. They were hard to put into boots. They didn't breathe that well. You got hot and sweaty. They were a pretty solid layer of protection, though I did take a foot peg to the knee with knee cups on and still had to have that stitched up. But ditched the knee cups one time, fell on my knees, didn't feel very good, so I started looking for other options. And what I ultimately found were, skateboarding knee pads from a company called 661. Now, if you've been around a while, you would know that 661 actually made motocross gear for a short period of time, and it was really good stuff. So the last two sets of knee pads I've had, which they've lasted a really long time, have been 661. The knee area is covered with something called biofoam. It's actually a very thick layer. It looks like it absorbs impacts really well and protects your kneecap. So nothing that you have to stuff in a boot. You just slide them up your knee over your socks and you're good to go. So that's what I would recommend. And again, if I need another set of knee pads down the road, first thing I'm going to do is Google 661 and see what the options are, or look at other skateboarding companies. Gloves are another thing to consider before a long adventure ride. If you've got a pair that is shot, highly recommend you replace them. Why? They're going to protect your hands. They're going to keep your hands warm. Even if it's mildly warm, just the wind chill can cool your hands. I don't run grip heaters. That sounds like a nice luxury item, but I've never outfitted a bike with those. So inspect your gloves and try some on. See what's going to work best for you. If they're too big, you run the risk of them bunching up in your hands, and that can be problematic when you go to use the brake or go to use the throttle. So like most things, make sure they fit well, and then it's just a matter of personal preference. I use Racer Gloves, and that is at Racer Gloves USA on Instagram. You guys can check them out. And if you happen to make a purchase there, let them know where you heard about them. Moisture wicking fabric should be on the list of items that you bring or wear along the way. Obviously, these synthetic materials are going to cool and move perspiration away from your body better than cotton, which has a tendency to hold moisture in. And, even in cold rides, you may sweat a little bit throughout the course of the day. You want that material to dry out so that you can stay warm and not lower your core temperature and run the risk of getting sick or chilled or whatever the case may be. So I would highly advise you to bring along some, moisture wicking gear and apparel for tops or whatever. Riding jackets, unless I'm in the Mojave and it's 90 degrees in the middle of the summer, I'm probably going to have two jackets. One heavier, one lighter, just to kind of ward off the wind. But it's always good to bring two jackets, and especially a heavy one in case the weather changes or you ride into high elevations. The rain comes, you get into the snow or whatever. Out in the wilderness, things, especially at elevation, have a tendency to really cool down at night. You could even wear the jacket while you're in your sleeping bag or around camp. So under most circumstances, I'm bringing two riding jackets. And I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty fond of the Gore-Tex material for my riding jacket. I know that this particular material or jackets made with it can be expensive, but if you take care of your jacket, I think it'll pay you back. And again, this material is waterproof, it's lightweight, it's breathable, so it will actually help keep you cool and will help keep you warm if it's cold out. There is another option out there, and that material is called Event. It is very similar to Gore-Tex, and I have a couple of Event jackets that I really love, and maybe even more than Gore-Tex. So that is an option, and my experience has shown me that Event fabric and items made with it are a little bit less expensive than that Gore-Tex brand name. So definitely something to consider. And you should also consider, maybe you don't need to buy your Gore-Tex or Event jacket from a motorcycle apparel manufacturer. Those items have a tendency to be a little bit more expensive. Granted, they are built with a purpose, and they're probably a little bit more rugged. But it would not be uncommon to go on a website like REI and see a Gore-Tex jacket on closeout for an affordable price. So if anything, source your options. And, again, my advice, bring 2 jackets unless you're just riding in the heat and, there won't be much for temperature or elevation fluctuations. Away from motorcycle gear and on to number 6, let's talk a little bit about your motorcycle toolkit. Don't leave home without it. You don't want to make that mistake. It is inevitable. It's going to happen. If you leave your tools at home, you're going to break down. You're going to be stranded. At the least, make sure your buddy has, a pretty good set of tools. Obviously, whatever's in your kit should contain common wrenches, sockets, screwdrivers, things that you can, again, make simple repairs on your bike with. A really good example of a minimalist toolkit that kind of covers all the bases is that one that comes with new KTM motorcycles. Now, I've kind of dismissed this toolkit over the years and set it off to the side, but I took a closer look at it this year as I was preparing toolkits for rental bikes and clients and long adventure tours, and that particular kit doesn't contain everything that you would want, obviously, but it's a pretty darn good start. So if you haven't ever seen one of these KTM toolkits, and I'm told that they're not going to be coming with the new bikes moving forward, you may want to take a look at these things because it's a great place to start, especially if you own a KTM or Husky, but it gives you a good idea of some of the things that you might want to carry. Don't forget, you're going to need the ability to remove your wheels and possibly change a tube or a tire. Now, most of us aren't going to ride with a tire on a long motorcycle adventure, but I have seen people do it. Pretty gnarly, but again, if you're like me and you run tubes, obviously you want to be carrying a couple spares and everything to do the job. Tire irons, valve stem remover. I use CO2, but I also carry a small mountain bike pump with me on long adventures as a backup. Sometimes those CO2 cartridges don't work, so you want to keep that in mind. Another item I'd throw in there is just a headlamp. If you have to make a repair early in the morning, late at night, it's nice to have some light and kind of be able to take a good look at the things you're working on. Spare bolts. I've accumulated quite a few over the years, but take a look at those common bolts on your bike. I know you've got a few extra ones laying around. Throw them in a baggie or something. Throw them in your toolkit. And if you have a bike like a KTM or Honda, Yamaha, the bolts on there, are pretty common. There's only 3 or 4 different kinds, and a lot of times the threads are the same. Maybe a bolt's longer here or there, but just take a good close look at that. Tape. I always bring some electrical tape with me for obvious reasons. A lot of wiring and harnesses and things like that on these fuel-injected bikes. So it's good to have electrical tape, and it'll serve more purposes than that. But just a heads up there. And then duct tape. You never know what type of gnarly trailside repair you're going to have to make. So bring along some duct tape. Zip ties, the universal fix-it-all. I carry different sizes, different lengths. I carry wire. You may need to wire something into position, who knows? And I'm not talking electrical wire. I'm talking some sort of steel or baling wire. I always bring just a little bit of that along in my toolkit. Cold epoxy like JB Weld. Myself, I have a 2-part epoxy from Gorilla Glue, but let's just say you punch a hole in your radiator. Let's just say you punch a hole in your radiator, or perhaps a rock takes out your clutch cover or something. You might be able to whip up a little bit of epoxy, make a repair, get to the next town, finish your adventure, whatever. So that's something that I would throw in there just to be safe. A couple other things. Chain breaker. If you have an issue with the chain, you may want the chain breaker to put it back together, or to break a link off or something. If you're going to bring the chain breaker, you want to bring a spare new master link and perhaps 3 or 4 links of good chain, just in case something happens and you need to work on your chain, right? So that should pretty much do it for your toolkit. If you want more information about the types of things I carry on these adventure rides, you're in luck. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a podcast dedicated to everything I would take in my toolkit. So if you're looking for more detail, look for that podcast. And I'll also couple that with a YouTube video kind of a walkthrough, and a blog post. So a lot of information coming on the toolkit that I carry and just kind of a lot of the miscellaneous items I bring for repairs. So be on the lookout for that. Again, if you want more detail, it is coming. Just give me a couple of weeks. Navigation is number 7 on my list. Again, we talked about this before. Unless you know where in the heck you're going, you really have 3 options, and those options are cell phone navigation, GPS navigation, and paper map navigation. My advice, use 2 of the 3 or use all 3. I wouldn't solely rely on one piece of technology or paper maps, which in my opinion, again, it's really hard to come about paper maps that are updated, and you don't want to be pulling your map out every 20 minutes trying to figure out which way to go. So embrace technology, use a GPS app or use a GPS, carry those maps, review them before the ride, but that's pretty much all I'm going to say about navigation for now. We've covered it in depth. And again, if you have questions, benmotorcycleadventures@gmail.com. I do my best to provide more detail, more answers as needed. Number 8 really deals with how you plan to capture, videos and photos along with your trip. What device are you going to bring to take care of that? Now, if you don't care and you're not going to take photos or videos on your trip, more power to you. But most of us want to share our experience, some on social media. Some of us want to bring this content back to make YouTube videos, show our friends and family, or just relive somewhere down the road. So there's a lot of options out there. Which one is right for you? That's totally up to you. You can obviously utilize your cell phone, though you will sacrifice some image and video quality. A dedicated camera is a great option for high-end video and high-resolution photos. I always carry a camera on my rides, but it can be a bit of a hassle. You have to make sure you take very good care of your camera, make sure it's protected along the way, keep it out of the elements, and I'll be honest, pulling over to use your camera every time you see something amazing is it can be a pain in the butt, and I've ridden with people who only brought a camera and, regretfully, at the end of the trip, they didn't really get that much footage, and the reason being was they were just tired of the hassle associated with pulling the camera out, swapping lenses, making sure everything was clean. So good option, but it can be a bit of a bother, and I would leave that to you, or leave that decision to you. GoPro, never been my favorite option. It's most certainly not the best option for photos. It's a pretty good option for video, but the GoPro is super versatile. Most of us are going to mount that on our helmet or mount it on our chest, so recording, again, pretty good video. It's just a click of the button away. Cameras are 12 megapixels, so if you want to stop somewhere, it's just a matter of detaching the unit from your helmet or from your chest. And then GoPros are engineered to be durable and water resistant, so they're going to be able to survive a motorcycle adventure. So again, not my favorite option all around, but if I could only take one thing, I really think the GoPro is the most versatile option out there. Last thing here, just want to talk about a couple of what I would consider to be unique options for capturing footage along your journey. The 360 cams offered by Rilo and Garmin are really, they really provide cool perspectives if you want to do something a little different. I probably wouldn't use them as my primary camera or anything like that, but they are a nice option. And again, it's all about perspective, and for me, I like to make creative videos, so that could be an option for you. The last thing, drones, which are rapidly gaining popularity, and there really are small drones that you can bring along for an adventure ride, but you really want to exercise caution. Components of a drone, the camera, the gimbal, all those things are very sensitive. They don't like dirt. They don't like weather. So if you're going to bring a drone along for a motorcycle adventure, make sure that you have a way or a nice case to protect it, and understand that it is going to take up some space within your luggage. Also, one more note about drones. If you don't like taking the time to get your camera out to do some recording, a drone may not be an option that you would prefer. Reason being, not unlike a camera, it takes a little bit of time to set the drone up and fly it. and usually you have to utilize your cell phone to at least steer with it, or use, or at the least the phone doubles as the screen unless you have a really high-end drone. So something to think about. I really, again, enjoy perspectives that drones provide. And, I don't think there's anything more magical than watching some motorcycles weave through the mountains and having a drone capture the footage. But that being said, it can be a bit of hassle to bring a unit like this on the ride. So kind of the last thing to consider. And I think it's time to move on to our last item. Okay, number 9, the last item on your motorcycle adventure packing list. Whew, I need to learn how to talk here. Number 9, last item on your motorcycle adventure packing list is actually not something that you're going to pack or stow. It is the luggage that you will utilize to carry everything along the way. Now, we've talked about hydration packs. If you're going on a lengthy adventure, that probably won't be enough to stow all your gear, but there are really good options out there from companies like Giant Loop, Moscow Moto, and Wolfman Luggage, and I'm not going to debate who's the best. I've used them all under different circumstances, and they all performed well. So it's really going to be, for you, a matter of personal preference, but what I think you should do before you get into the luggage game is really assess the motorcycle adventure that you're going on. So, are you going to ride for 2 days? Are you going to ride for 10 days? Is it going to be a supported ride? Are you going to utilize lodging? Are you going to camp off the bike? Obviously, the more things you need to carry, the larger, the more cargo space you're going to be in. There are a plethora of options. You can get front and rear fender bags, tank bags, handlebar bags, saddle bags, obviously, panniers. There's a lot of options out there for, carrying stuff on your bike. But again, assess that ride. And, I'm always going to default to the lightweight option. So I'm going to bring the smallest saddle bags or luggage along for the ride, because I don't care how well this stuff is designed or engineered. At times it can be a pain to have the luggage on the bike. At times it can be uncomfortable or inconvenient. So I'm going to strap as few things as possible to my bike, and again, mitigate that unsprung weight. But just to recap, Moscow Moto, Giant Loop, Wolfman Luggage, all great options. And also, I've noticed a company called Lone Rider on Instagram. He has some very nice looking luggage. Could be worth a look. And he also offers tents too. So again, assess that ride, understand really how much cargo space you're going to need, and then move forward from there. All right, guys, we made it. Those are the 9 items that should be on your motorcycle adventure packing list. As per usual, your mileage may vary. This is a great place to start. Let the conditions, the climate, things like that really determine what should be on your list. And as a reminder, the items that I have on my list: water, food, shelter, some sort of first aid kit, clothing and the gear obviously deserves careful consideration, a toolkit, a means for navigation, a means for capturing photos and video along on the ride, and then obviously assess your needs for motorcycle luggage. Those are the 9 things that you should have or should start with on your motorcycle adventure packing list, and then you can grow from there. Reminder, next week on the podcast, we will have a real live guest. I've been talking about it a lot, but I'm excited to announce that Adam from Demata Creative will be on the show. We're going to do our interview Thursday, and I couldn't be happier. If you're not familiar with Demata Creative, they are Adam makes these really cool, what he calls trail essential pouches that a lot of us have adopted for carrying motorcycle tools and things of that nature. So excited to have him on the show, hear his story. He'll talk about some of his products. He also rides motorcycles. So again, Demata Creative will be on our show next week. And then I just want to ask you guys a favor before we go tonight. Whatever podcast medium you're listening on, please click subscribe. That will notify you when the next podcast comes out. I'm shooting to have new episodes out every Sunday or Monday. There may be some bonus episodes coming up too, especially with the Supercross season. I know some people want to talk about that. Again, I have a whole bunch of guests lined up. And actually, today I spoke with a rider who has literally ridden a motorcycle around the world. So we're setting up an interview for that. I've got people who've been on backcountry discovery routes and things of that nature. So a lot of guests to come. And again, it's just a matter of me working out the logistics and getting these people scheduled. But again, that favor, please subscribe to our podcast and visit our website, www.benmotorcycleadventures.com. For each and every podcast, I include show notes in our blog, so you can come back, click links, check out the recap of the show, maybe see what's coming next. And a lot of the information from the podcast is in there. Social media channels, at Ben Motorcycle Adventures on Facebook and Instagram. Always appreciate the love. Check out my stories. I'm starting to upload some of these podcasts to Instagram TV, so you'll be able to scroll up into those. Really looking forward to utilizing that platform in the future as IGTV continues to grow. And then YouTube, I've got a system here to where I can export these podcasts to YouTube too. So a lot of stuff going on. Check out that YouTube channel for sure. I've got a couple pretty good videos on there, especially from the Idaho Backcountry Discovery Route. So again, subscribe, visit our website, check us out on social media, and my email again, benmotorcycleadventures@gmail.com. Feel free to contact me. Under most circumstances, I will send you a response right away. And other than that, guys, I just want to thank you for listening, and we will see you next week with Adam from Damata Creative.